our job, our responsibility as presenters is to always put ourselves in the seat of the listener. We have such a finite amount of time. And so you have to ask yourself, how can I creatively share my most compelling talking points so that I'm creating a rock solid case? Craft a clear, concise, and compelling message that answers the questions, why do I need this? How are you going to save me time? How are you going to save me money? How are you going to save me mental sanity?
That's Terri Sjodin. She spent over 25 years working with professionals to enhance their persuasive presentation skills. She's been inducted into the National Speakers Association Hall of Fame, and today she's sharing some of her pro tips from her latest book, Presentation Ready. Improve your sales presentation outcomes and avoid the 12 most common mistakes. She's got a whole lot of good stuff, and not just for sales folks. You'll learn 1, what your audience really wants to know. 2, reasons why your presentation is boring and how to fix it. And 3, the key mistake people won't tell you that you're making. I'm Pete Mockaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Terri. Terri, welcome.
Thank you, Pete. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm excited to be talking about being presentation ready. And you've been researching and teaching on persuasiveness and communications and presentations for decades. Tell us, any particularly surprising, fascinating, striking discoveries you've made about us humans and communication and how we're persuaded that really stick with you?
Yeah. So as you know, my background is in speech and debate. I was highly competitive in high school and in college on the speech and debate teams. And so I've always had this awareness of the power and the impact of public speaking and persuasive presentation skills. And so fast forward 20 years plus later, when we launched into this research study that did a deeper dive on the topic of persuasive messaging, we asked people, look, do you think that making a presentation mistake matters? Does it impact your getting a win or a deal or an opportunity? And 94% of our participants in the research study said yes. And that's statistically a very high number, which I think is quite surprising. Secondarily, over 55% of the participants in the survey said that they had little to no presentation skills training over the course of their career, which means over half of the professionals in the market today are really doing the best they can with what they know through trial and error. So the goal behind the book and the research study was to help people build and deliver more effective presentations, whether they're one-on-one, small group, or large group, whether they're in-person, virtual, or hybrid. And then what we know is that on some level, most people want to improve their presentations, but they just don't know where to start. And that can be costly. So in the book and in the research, we identified the 12 most common mistakes and help people course correct faster so that they can get where they want to go.
Now, what's really cool is your book is in the context of sales presentations, but the wisdom is applicable to all sorts of persuasive communications presentations. But what I love about sales is we got numbers, we got results, money dollars associated with them.
Me too.
So can you share with us maybe a story of just what kind of a transformation is possible if you maybe walk us through a situation where someone was doing some things wrong, they corrected it, how they did it, and then what they saw on the other end of it?
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite stories is a confession of my own. I personally have made all 12 of the mistakes that we've identified in the book. And I try to take the reader or the listeners back to the beginning. As I mentioned, I kind of cut my teeth in this subject area when I was on the debate team. And what you learn early on when you go to a tournament is that it's a pretty level playing field. There's no matching uniforms if you compete in speech and debate. Everybody's just given a number. And then 6 or 7 competitors will go into a room. They deliver their presentation. And then at the end of 3 preliminary rounds, the individual with the best overall scores prevails, right? They move on to semifinals and finals. It's pretty cut and dry, for better or for worse. You know, if your talk was decent. But here's the rub. I would stay. Even if I didn't win, and I didn't always win, I wanted to, but I would stick around. I would go to the semifinals. I would go to the finals. And I would watch to see what was landing, what was working for that specific presenter, what made the judges or the audience lean in. And then I would go home and I would kind of tweak it and fix it and make my best guess at what I needed to do to make it better. And the takeaway here is really very simple. You just don't go back to the next tournament with the speech that didn't win. But business people do it all the time, right? They go back out into the field over and over and over again. And I love that you made the reference to the fact that everybody sells something, because I believe that to be true. Even though we don't always love the S word, sales, whether you're selling a product, a service, a philosophy, an idea, when you're selling yourself, even in a job interview or for a promotion, everybody sells something. And so I hope that by helping people to understand what the most common mistakes are, then they can avoid them and again, accomplish whatever their outcome is that they're shooting for.
Terri, I love this so much. You're bringing back fond memories for me of high school speech team. But what was interesting was I love that lesson right there in terms of like learning, observing, turning everything into a source of wisdom there, because those who did not break, they did not get to the finals. They usually chose to go to the room where they were doing the original comedy finals. They always booked the largest spaces for the original comedy, or OC, as they said in the biz, because that's just funny. That's entertaining. Like, let's watch the funny guys since we were stuck here until the bus leaves after the award ceremony. And you're saying, no, I'm going to go see what are winners doing and see what I can learn from them.
And isn't that the takeaway for all of us? When we learn from the people who beat us out at whatever it is that we're trying to achieve, then we can course correct. But most people are moving so fast, Pete. They're just, I'm super busy. I don't have time. But what is it costing you if you don't take the time to reflect and make those changes?
I hear you. Well, so you've got 12 mistakes. We're not going to cruise through all 12, but maybe give us the overview of the three categories here.
So there are three main categories. The category of case development. Did you build a persuasive and compelling case? And then the second category is creativity. Did you create a thought-provoking message, something that makes people lean in and go, oh, I've heard this before, but the way you're saying it, it's landing in my mind in a different way. And then the third category is delivery. That includes your eye contact, your body language, but also everything from verbal missteps to the way that you deliver using visual aids. And in each of those three categories, there are 4 mistakes that live underneath each one of those main categories.
Well, I'd like to jump into the ones I found most intriguing.
Okay.
And one of them, when it comes in terms of case development, is you say being overly informative versus persuasive. Aren't facts good, Terri? How's that a mistake to be overly informative? What's the scoop here?
I know. So in the overall study, there were over 5,000 participants. And this was based on individuals whose livelihood is dependent on their ability to build and deliver a persuasive message. And so we said, looking back over the last 6 to 12 months, is there anything that you think cost you that win? And data dumping or being overly informative really came up over and over and over again. It was in the top 3. So let me kind of give you the top 3, and then we'll kind of circle back to being overly informative versus persuasive. So the top 3 biggest mistakes that most people self-identified included being overly informative versus persuasive, winging it, and failing to close the sale. And you might think, well, do those kind of overlap? And in a way they do. However, being overly informative sounds like this. We do this, and we do this, and we have this, and we're number 1, and we really care. And it sounds like this very long laundry list, if you will, of attributes. But it doesn't pass the so what test. It doesn't feel compelling to me. And so you might feel very well-intended, like it's my responsibility to go out and give a presentation that is incredibly informative, and then the individual will be able to make a decision. But in today's compelling market, what would help you and serve you better is if you can craft a clear, concise, and compelling message that answers the questions, why do I need this? How are you going to save me time? How are you going to save me money? How are you going to save me mental sanity? The list goes on. And so when I'm helping someone, it's because I'm helping them to understand, do you hear how you're giving me more of a list of attributes versus compelling arguments that want to make me move towards action? And when they have that aha moment, again, they can tweak their presentations and really focus in the brief amount of time they're given into a place where they can go, oh, shoot, I can be more compelling.
That's good. And well, as we're talking a little bit in the context of sales presentations and demos, I mean, I've been on the receiving end of many because, I mean, it's very easy for people to get email addresses of podcasters. So it's right in the RSS feed. And so I get a lot of them. And then a fair number of them are cool software startup-y things in the podcast world. And that is, I would say, something I do see again and again and again is like we hear about like, oh, this is the history and the founder's story. And
we really care and we have a lot of choices.
Yeah. The background of something like the technical architecture, yada, yada. And so what I really want to hear is this thing is awesome at delivering this benefit to you. In terms of like, hey, these 9 podcasters quadrupled their audience size once they started rocking and rolling with our platform for a few months. Like, oh yeah, like that'll do it. As opposed to look at these cool graphics. Like, okay, those graphics are cool, but I'm not seeing how this helps me accomplish the things I want to accomplish.
And brevity is your friend. So again, that kind of moves us into the creativity section, but we have such a finite amount of time. And so you have to ask yourself, how can I creatively share my most compelling talking points so that I'm creating a rock solid case and pairing that with an interesting story or anecdote that makes people go, oh, okay, that was good, right? Good nugget.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you pair those with speaking in your own authentic voice in delivery, that's when people go, oh, that was good. I enjoyed that. You seem authentic. I feel like you did your homework. Your arguments make sense to me. And in that course, people feel better about making a yes decision or a moving forward decision or a let's make our next appointment time decision. And so, in the context of your entire presentation, I mean, the intention of this podcast is to help people to get where they want to go faster. And allegedly, if we understand and respect the fact that people buy people, then how else do we communicate our people skills if not through our verbal communication skills?
That's well said. And I liked how you conveyed when we've got a compelling case delivered creatively with a strong, authentic delivery, it just feels delightful. So we're more likely to offer a yes. And even if you don't, I've had this happen before. I'm on the receiving end and I get something that hits all those boxes. Like, my takeaway is like, this is really cool and I like you, but it's not for me. But I am really pretty stoked to be able to start providing referrals in terms of like, because I feel like I'm going to look good. It's like, you got to check out this. I think you're going to love it. It's like, it doesn't work for me, but I think it'll work for you. And Terry's just the best. And so I think it's beautiful that even if you don't get the immediate yes you were seeking, when you check those boxes to deliver a delightful experience, you're developing goodwill and an asset of a stream of good things coming to you.
I liked your use of delightful experiences. Let's pivot on that for a moment. I thought you might find it interesting that when we were working with our survey respondents and we asked them, of course, what are the most common self-confessions? But on the opposite side, we said, who better to judge business and sales professionals than other business and sales professionals? So when somebody comes in to present to you and you're the listener, is there anything you've observed that cost them the win or the deal or the opportunity? And the number one answer was none of the 3 that I just mentioned that were self-identified. The number one answer that people noticed in others is that their talks were boring, boring, boring.
Mm-hmm.
So don't you think it's interesting that most people self-identify as overly informative, but other people are boring? And so we call that the third person effect, because even when we're presenting, we don't always see ourselves in the same lens that we see others. And so having that dual perspective of how do I see myself as a presenter, but also what do I expect when I'm in the role of the listener, that gives us a different way of constructing our message because we've looked at it from both perspectives. And that can be a winning combination.
That's great. And I did want to talk about boring, boring, boring.
Okay.
Terri, tell us, what makes something boring and how can we be not boring?
So all three elements can be tied up in a boring presentation. You can have a really flat, boring case where you're like, oh, I've heard this all before. There is nothing new here. I'm bored. Bored. It can also come from your creativity. Like, wow, you made some really great arguments, but your stories, your illustrations, your evidence, boring, old, flat, right? Too much text on the screen. It just doesn't work in the creativity standpoint. And then in delivery, it could be a flat, boring, monotone voice. It could be word redundancy. It could be the fact you just don't seem very enthusiastic about your own content. And then even worse, and one of the new things that's come up is if you're in a hybrid environment, meaning you might have 2 or 3 people that are in front of you on a presentation, but maybe you have 6 or 7 people that are off-site and they're participating via Zoom or Teams and so it's hybrid. And oftentimes the presenter will forget the people that are online or off-site. They forget that they're even there. So they're only presenting to the people that are in person in front of them. And so it's super boring for the people that are off-site. So boring can be impacting all 3 elements of building your message.
I hear you. There's a lot going on there. It could be any number of culprits to get after. Is it possible, Terri, that we can zoom in on a major offender in terms of this is a frequent and pervasive and intense cause of boredom that needs to be rectified?
The easy go-tos are when somebody uses way too many PowerPoint slides in their presentation and they're text-driven and they're ultimately reading you their slides.
Yeah.
That's just horrifying. And it happens all the time. And when we ask people, why do you do that? And they'll say, well, Terri, I have to get through the material. And my question is, what's the point of getting through the material if nobody's really listening to what the heck it is that you're saying anyway? Or they'll say, it's not my fault. I have to read these slides because legal requires us to be compliant. There's all kinds of lovely excuses for it, but unfortunately, it doesn't serve the listener. And our job, our responsibility as presenters is to always put ourselves in the seat of the listener. Do I want to hear this? But I think it was interesting. All of those things.
That's true. It's funny. I recently had to read a legal disclaimer as part of a podcast ad, which doesn't happen that often, but it was a financial servicey thing. It's like, okay, this is required, so I get it. And I think I got a kick out of it. It even said, and you've probably heard this before, maybe in the radio or somewhere, in the talking points, it said, double speed recommended if possible. It's like, all right, at least you know people don't want to hear it. And I even flagged it like, oh, we got a little legal disclaimer here. And so you're right. I think those excuses are maybe technically true, but there is often a creative way around it. It's like, oh, and we've got a legal disclosure. You'll note that investment results could vary and this is risky and those sorts of things. Feel free to read it afterwards as well. And there you go. You handled it in 5 seconds and offer to the fun stuff.
And to your point, it really does come down to the individual presenter. It's our responsibility. And no one illustrates that better than the Southwest Airlines flight attendants that give you the safety announcements in their own authentic voice or in some sort of clever and fun way, because they know that most people aren't paying attention. But if they put a little creative spin on it, then all of a sudden people are like, oh, I wonder where they're going to go with this. And they can take even the most boring and mundane and make it lively and entertaining.
That's good. Well, now in the zone of delivery, can you tell us what are some of the top verbal missteps people make and how should we fix them?
So the surprising thing about verbal missteps was that it was an area that most people did not self-identify, but it was highly recognized in others. And the other frightening thing about that particular issue is that it is rarely something that another individual will communicate to you. So for example, if you're saying or like or every other word, it will be highly irritating to the listener, but nobody will tell you. Another issue that comes up is when somebody mispronounces a word, we just let them go. But in the back of their mind, they're thinking that person has no idea how to correctly use that word, and it undermines your credibility. or if they use just too simple or basic of wording. Again, that's not something that people will tell you. If you swear in a presentation, you might think, oh, well, I'm just being familiar. Like it's cool if I swear. It's not a big deal. They can see that I'm really down to earth. But we found in the research that people find it off-putting and they're just not going to tell you. So all of these little things, or if you're a close talker and you're just talking, it brings memories back of a Seinfeld episode where people are speaking and you're like, you're impacting my spatial relationships. All of these things can kind of fall under that category of verbal missteps. If you're speaking too quickly, you're speaking too slowly. The list kind of goes on and on. But again, if you think about it, when was the last time somebody really spent an hour thinking about the way that they speak, the way that they articulate a word, to focus on vocabulary variants, to think about pausing instead of using a filler word, all of those graceful, beautiful elements to take your presentation to another level? You can still be in your own authentic voice. We're just dialing it in so that your own authentic voice lands with the greatest amount of efficiency and effectiveness.
Oh, Terri, that's so much fun. I was like, so it's perfect because you're right. You're not going to learn about those without asking. And even if you ask, you still might not get it. You'll need to videotape it and have like a trusted person really review that with you in order to get it. And you won't know. And it's so funny, the assumptions that we just make in terms of course, people like the swearing, or and maybe some people do, but it sounds like generally we're better off not doing that. Maybe that didn't need to be said, but we're generally better off not doing that. And maybe, I don't know if if our counterpart is swearing, are we well suited to match them, or are we still better off not swearing?
Yeah, it's better to not. It's
all right.
When in doubt, leave it out. So the other issue is kind of bleeds into strange body language and gesturing, where you might have your hands in your pockets, or you're fiddling with a pen. Or there's all kinds of little weird, strange, and incredible things. So the takeaway here is people say, what can I do? A couple of choices. So one is just do a scrimmage, right? If you have a big meeting coming up, you have a presentation opportunity, sit with a friend, a colleague, a spouse, somebody in your industry, and say, look, will you just kind of do a run through with me and take out your cell phone and just hit the video button and leave it on a stand. And then later on, kind of talk it through and then watch the playback so that you can see and hear yourself as the listener will. And that will give you some of the insights that you need to be able to course correct. Now, try not to be too hard on yourself. We all flip out when we hear our own voice. We don't sound the same to ourselves as we do in a recorded scenario. Just to give you an example, did you feel comfortable the first time you heard your playback on your outgoing voicemail message or recording?
No.
You probably are fine because you have such a beautiful voice, Pete. But
I'm honored, but I'm not. Well, I mean, part of it's microphones. Don't get me started because I won't stop. But part of it's microphone quality, and voicemails are horrific, and I don't know how to fix it. I've Googled this before, Terri. But then even beyond that, it's just sort of surprising. It's like, oh, is that what I sound like?
Right. Or, oh, I didn't like the way that I sounded. And most people re-record their outgoing voicemail message over and over and over again until they feel like they get it right. And what does that tell us? It tells us, wow, once we become aware of the way that we speak and present, what do we want to do? We want to perfect it. We want to improve upon it. We want to make it better. We don't want someone to have a negative impression of who we are, even based on our outgoing voicemail message. So much so that many people don't even have an outgoing message on their voicemail. But we know that when people hear your voice, when they hear you speak, that they connect with you. And so avoidance is not helping. What will help is to embrace it, lean into it. Let's fix it. Let's have fun with it. Figure out how to make your own style and personality and authenticity really come to life. And remember that it doesn't have to be perfect to work. I'm not perfect. I've made all mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, but I'm consistently trying. That's all. I'm trying to level up. I'm trying to make it better. And in the course of that, look, we're all going to have wins and losses, and it doesn't have to be perfect to work, but you do have to try. That's really the takeaway.
Understood. I want to get your take on visual aids. You say one mistake is just way too much text and reading it. Bad news. Any other top do's and don'ts there?
I'll give you some do's. One of the things that really works beautifully is if we just step away from your PowerPoint deck. All right. So think of all of the other beautiful ways that you can augment a presentation that don't require PowerPoint. Maybe you just use the actual physical item and hold it up, or maybe you use other sensory modalities, sound, sight, smell, that feeling a texture of something, things where you're asking yourself, wow, how can I allow the listener to engage in my presentation with other sensory modalities that don't require a PowerPoint slide? And that in and of itself will set you head and shoulders above your competition. They'll say, well, that was clever. And you're like, really? Because I moved away from a PowerPoint slide and I used the real thing. But it's just those nuances make a difference and show people you care enough to make a unique kind of presentation rather than doing the same old, same old.
That's super. And when it comes to really forming a connection with listeners, any top tips there?
I think it starts with really genuinely caring about the outcome of that conversation. You know, even when you and I were having our pre-call before we jumped on the interview, I just like to take a couple of minutes and say, look, hey, what would make this a great experience for you? What would make it great for your listeners? And you said, well, that's a great question. Most people don't ask me that. You know, I think it just showing people that you show up caring.
Yeah.
And that really helps to build connection from the get-go. Now, different people will lean into different aspects of your talk. Some people will lean into the evidence. They want to know that you can provide ROI and they want to see the numbers. Other people are looking at your pathos, your heart, your storytelling. Others will want to know that you have the credibility, the street cred, the experience, that you've got your degree or that you've got 30 years of experience. So there are a lot of nuances that speak to credibility or driving connection. And it really will depend on who you're speaking to. But I think, you know, from a nice general perspective, opening with a real clear intention to make a connection, not just for the sake of doing it to get the job done, but because you want to have a good personal experience with those people, that will come through, I think. And I don't know that you have to try so hard. It doesn't have to be that hard. I think we probably overcomplicate that part of the process.
All right. Well, Terri, tell me anything else you want to make sure to mention before we hear about some of your favorite things.
You know, I appreciate the time today. And I say this to people all the time. People ask me, oh, gosh, Terri, like, what's the hardest product or service to sell? And the answer is the one you don't believe in. So I can give you the greatest tips in the world for crafting a persuasive and compelling message. But the first requirement is that you sell and represent something that you believe in at your core. And then after that, try to have fun with it. I think on some level, everybody wants to improve their presentations. And so I hope that this book, Presentation Ready, will help you to do that just a little easier. And if you'd like, maybe books aren't your thing, that's okay. You can watch the course. I have a course on LinkedIn Learning. So it's free if you're a LinkedIn Premium member. And that also covers the 12 mistakes. But my intention is to just get people to think about the gift of using your voice to make things happen. There's a beautiful quote that we often think that it's comfort and luxury that are the chief requirements for happiness in life, when all we truly need to be happy is something to be enthusiastic about. And I'm hoping that I help people get just a little bit more enthusiastic about their next presentation opportunity, because the more fun you have delivering it, the more fun the listeners have receiving it. And that's how you create a win-win presentation ready opportunity.
Big thanks to Terri for sharing her wisdom with us, and big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out. Big thanks to our sponsor, Acorns. Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing for your future. You don't need a lot of money or expertise to invest with Acorns. In fact, you can get started with just your spare change. Acorns recommends an expert-built portfolio that fits you and your money goals, then automatically invests your money for you. NerdWallet.com, whom I love on these sorts of matters, gives Acorns a whopping 4.7 stars and says, quote, "If you want to make the most of your spare change, there's no better place to do that than Acorns. Head to acorns.com/awesome or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today." And we got a legal disclaimer here. It may not be representative of all clients. Tier 1 compensation provided. Compensation provides an incentive to positively promote Acorns. View important disclosures at acorns.com/awesome. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. Please consider your objectives, risk tolerance, and Acorns' fees before investing. Acorns Advisors LLC, Acorns, is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Brokerage services are provided to clients of Acorns by Acorns Securities LLC, member FINRA/SIPC. For more information, visit acorns.com. One sponsor to check out is Harvard Business Review. This brilliant magazine, published at hbr.org, is the leading destination for smart management thinking. Fun fact, HBR has been mentioned in 108 episodes of the show. That's because HBR has great stuff that comes up often. They've got explainer videos, podcasts, real-world case studies, and much more. I think of HBR each night that I put on my special orange glasses. Their article, "Will Blue Light Glasses Improve Your Sleep?" revealed that those who wore them reported better sleep and a 7% improvement in work performance as compared to those who wore the sham glasses. So I cite HBR anytime anyone tells me that I look silly wearing them. Now, much of HBR's content is available for free when you sign up at their site. Subscriptions that get you unlimited content cost $10 a month. If you visit hbr.org/subscriptions and enter the promo code AWESOME, you can save 10% off of that subscription. Again, to save 10% off of your HBR subscription, go to www.hbr.org/subscriptions and enter the promo code AWESOME. One sponsor to check out is Storyworth. Whenever I'm thinking about meaningful Father's Day gifts, Storyworth leaps to mind. Storyworth helps you preserve precious memories and stories from your father for years to come. Each week, Storyworth emails your loved ones a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick, such as, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? I personally love the prompt so much that I have refreshed Storyworth's questions page many times looking for more. Storyworth makes the writing process super quick and easy. All your loved one needs to do is respond to that email with a story, and then you get a quick copy of that. And after a year of this fun, Storyworth compiles your loved one's stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. Families love Storyworth so much, they've got 25,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot and have millions of stories preserved. So give all the fathers in your life a unique, heartfelt gift they'll all cherish for years. Storyworth. Right now, you can save $10 on your first purchase when you go to storyworth.com/awesome. That's storyworth.com/awesome to save $10 on your first purchase. Lovely. Well, now could you share with us a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
Well, of course, the State of Sales Presentations research study I did in cooperation with my alma mater, San Diego State University. And if you would like, your listeners can access all three of the reports, the pre-pandemic, mid-virtual, and then the post-pandemic study. If they go to my site at terrisjodin.com, they can download the studies for free. There's no cost. They can get the research study reports.
Lovely. And a favorite book?
My go-to would be Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. So I really believe in the gift of entrepreneurial freedom and being able to contribute. I think we all have our own unique ways that we want to contribute on the planet. And so I honor everyone's right to use their voice, create, and to monetize that.
Alrighty. And a favorite habit?
So I have this weird thing that I do. My friends tease me about it all the time. But when I have a dinner party or a lunch gathering and everyone sits down, I say, okay, everyone, let's do 2-minute updates. I go around the table and I ask everyone to give a 2-minute update of what they're doing personally and professionally so that everyone only has to share that nugget once with all of the people that are at the table. And then it stimulates really lovely dialogue and gets people talking about things that are near and dear to our hearts, which is what's going on with my friends and family.
Mm-hmm. And is there a key nugget you share that really seems to connect and resonate with folks that they quote back to you often?
There's so many little isms, I suppose, that I say, but I say it doesn't have to be perfect to work. But you still have to try.
Okay. And if folks want to learn more or get in touch, where would you point them?
If people would like to learn more about my speaking opportunities or about Presentation Ready, please visit our website at SjodinCommunications.com, or the easiest way is to just go to TERRI, Sjodin, and that's spelled SJOD as in David, IN as in Nancy, SJODIN.com. And you can access all kinds of information, including the research study, information about Presentation Ready, and much, much more.
All right. And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
There's a beautiful adaptation to a Shakespearean quotation, which reads, "All the world is a stage, and business and sales professionals play to the most discriminating audiences of all, their clients and prospects." So I encourage you to just take a little extra time to craft an engaging and persuasive message and go make your dreams happen. It's all up to you. I don't know anybody who has a magic wand. So we have to kind of put our boots to the street, craft our messages, and go make it happen.
All right. Thank you, Terri. This is fun. I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Pete, for having me. I appreciate your time.
I love Terri's take on practicing with the video recordings. It catches a lot of stuff that we are unaware of and that people tend to not tell us. So much good stuff. If you want to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we've referenced, please drop on by awesomeatyourjob.com/EP970 or sign up for the gold nuggets at awesomeatyourjob.com to see a summary write-up of the wisdom Terri shared in a quick email. You can read, as well as unlocking the vault of all 970 of these summaries at awesomeatyourjob.com. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
This episode is brought to you in part by Purina. Purina is dedicated to creating richer lives for pets and the people who love them. From helping older pets think like their younger selves to making cat ownership a possibility for more people than ever, Purina is helping pets thrive so they can live long, healthy, and happy lives. Purina has you covered for all your furry friends' needs, whether they meow or bark. From litter to treats to their best-in-class, nutrient-packed food with taste your pets will love, Purina's got your back at every stage of your pet's life. Your pet gives you the joy of the spring sunshine all year round. So today and every day, care for your pet with Purina. Your pet is Purina's passion. To learn more, head to Amazon.com/Purina.